Well, thank you, Hope, and thanks for coming out this evening. As Hope said, I'm from Maine. I live in Hollowell, Maine, which is near the capital of Augusta. But I'm a lifelong resident of New England. I was born in Connecticut, grew up in New Hampshire, spent a few years in Vermont, and spent the last 30 years or so in Maine. And I do this for fun. I've been hiking for 5 decades and throughout New England, and I just love hiking, and I love sharing that passion with folks. And this is just sort of a labor of love. During the day, to actually pay the bills, I work for an organization called Maine Coast Heritage Trust. It's a statewide land trust that conserves land on the coast of Maine, not unlike the trustees of reservation that has a beautiful property here in this town. So without further ado, we're going to do a little tour of New England and some of the highlights of mostly from the most recent book that I did. So the 2 most recent books that I've published, the one on the left is 100 Classic Hikes of New England. It's the 2nd edition. First book came out in 2010. There are 40 new hikes in this edition, came out in 2023. All in color. It's a great resource for hiking throughout all 6 New England states. The other book is Day Hiking in New England, 115 day hikes. There's a minor overlap of about 5 hikes between the 2, so there's over 210 hikes combined in those 2 books. So the cover shot there of the most recent book is a famous, iconic scene along the Appalachian Trail in New Hampshire on the Franconia Ridge. So it's one of the most spectacular sections of hiking in New England. You're looking from the summit of Mount Lafayette, about a mile high, looking south to Mount Lincoln. It's just a great place to be. You want to do it on a day like that. Ideal weather, you get unbelievable views. You pick a day where the snow and wind and stuff, you could get in trouble. So just be cognizant of the weather. That's my daughter there at a place a little north of here near Tully Lake in Massachusetts. Another place has some great trustees of reservation properties, Doan's Falls, and this is near Jacob's Ladder, I think it's called. But a great little place to go hiking, waterfalls and lakes and so forth. So let's just start our tour of New England. Sort of big picture, when I write hiking guidebooks, I like to provide a lot of variety and flexible itinerary. So when I pick the hikes to choose in the book, I'm not going to pick all the hardest hikes, the most spectacular hikes. I'm trying to get a variety of different hikes to choose from. So when I go to look at a place like the White Mountains where there's a lot of opportunities, I may pick a hike like this. This is Cherry Pond, which is a nice, easy, flat hike, about 4-mile round trip to this scenic pond with great views of the Presidential Range. It's a great place to see birds, moose, and other wildlife. So that's sort of on the easier end of the scale in the book, but also in the White Mountains, you can visit a place like this. This is one of a handful of backpacks that are on the Classic Hikes book. That view there is from Bond Cliff. And from that spot, you're 9 miles from the closest road. So you're in the middle of the Pemigewasset Wilderness, which is the largest wilderness area in New England. It's over 40,000 acres. Just a spectacular place to be. So then when I find particular hikes in the book, I'd like to try to provide variety there as well. So this is my brother hiking up the slopes of Belknap Mountain on the Belknap Range Trail. This is in the Lakes District of Lakes region of New Hampshire. And so this is an end-to-end hike about 13 miles from one end to the other. So I described the hike in the book, leaving a car on one end and starting on the other end and hiking the 13 miles if that's what you want. But it also provides the opportunity if you want to break it up into day hikes. So on one end of that end-to-end is Mount Major, which is a really popular 3.5, 4-mile loop you can do with great views of Lake Winnipesaukee and the White Mountains. On the other end, you have Gunstock Mountain and Mount Belknap, maybe a 5 or 6 mile loop. So I try to provide that kind of variety. So most of the hikes in the book, you'll see that the book will say, this is the hike, this is the way to extend the hike, this is the way to shorten the hike, here's the way to maybe adjust it to fit what you're looking for. The other thing I like to do when I'm finding hikes to pick for these books is we're blessed to have a lot of historical places in New England. So, this is a fun place to visit. Battle Road in Lexington and Concord. You can walk in the footsteps of the Minutemen as they're chasing the Redcoats back to Boston Harbor. A little closer to here, this is the Horse Caves on Mount Norwottuck. in this spot, supposedly Daniel Shays in the 1780s stored ammunition during the Shays Rebellion. That was the rebellion that led to the downfall of the Articles of Confederation in the creation of the Constitution that we have today. This property here is in Mashmucket State Park in Connecticut. It's called the Wolf Den. And the legend is that Israel Putnam, who was a famous general in the Battle of Bunker Hill, shot and killed the last wolf in the state of Connecticut here. Today, it's just a kind of a fun place to explore. There's interesting geological features and great places to see wildlife, scarlet tanagers and things like that. Fairly close to here is Hublin Tower on Talcott Mountain, just west of Hartford. It's on the Simsbury Bloomfield line. And this is a great little hike on the Metacomet Trail. And in the early 1900s, a German immigrant built this facility here and invited some famous guests. As President Dwight D. Eisenhower spent the night here, and as head of the Screen Actors Guild, Ronald Reagan spent the night here. Today, it's owned by a nonprofit, and if you go up there on the times that it's open, you can climb up to the top and you see those glass windows. You get 360-degree view of pretty much the entire state of Connecticut. I love hiking, but I also love to look for birds. I like to combine those often. And this is a really popular place to go bird watching, particularly during bird migration. This is Monhegan Island off the coast of Maine, excuse me. So it's an hour-long, passenger-only ferry ride to this unbelievable island. About 60% of it's conserved. The book describes a 5-mile hike you can do along the whole shore path. And you're looking at 150, 160-foot drops right into the ocean here. But during the spring migration of birds, what happens is the birds fly overnight, and then they land on these coastal islands, and then they're just eating anything they can get. So you get there early in the morning, and the birds are everywhere. And so it's not uncommon to see a number of warbler species here. That's a black and white warbler. That's a chestnut-sided warbler. American redstart. Northern Parula, that's a palm warbler, magnolia warbler, Blackburnian warbler, a yellow rump warbler, common yellowthroat, black-throated green warbler, and a black-throated blue warbler. So there are 11 birds on that screen. It would not be unusual on a mid-May day, if you hit it just right, to see all those species and more. I was on the island earlier this May, and we saw 15 or 16 warbler species. It was incredible. I mentioned earlier I work for an organization called Maine Coast Heritage Trust. So land conservation is near and dear to my heart. I think we're blessed in New England to have had so many organizations to conserve these places that we can now enjoy. And so I like to feature a number of properties that have been conserved by nonprofit organizations. So one of those is, this is George Parker Woodlands. This is a Audubon Society property in Rhode Island. So the Audubon Societies in all 6 New England states are a great resource to find hiking opportunities wherever you are in New England, wherever you are in the country for that matter. They tend to be well-manicured places with great places to see wildlife, really family-friendly locations to visit. This property here is a Berkshire's Natural Resources Council trail near North Adams, Massachusetts. It's right off the Mohawk Trail. What I like about this hike is it starts at a high point on the Mohawk Trail. If you know where the sort of hairpin turn is that drops into North Adams, it's right before you descend there. So you're up fairly high. And I think the elevation gain is about 500 or 600 feet to get to the summit of Spruce Hill, excuse me. And from this open ledge, you get this unrestricted view of Mount Greylock, which is rising about 1,000 feet higher than you. It's just, the bang for your buck on this hike is really nice. This picture here is of the Great Pond Mountain Wildlands. This is a land trust property in the state of Maine near the town of Bucksport. And so it's sort of halfway between the Camden Hills and Acadia National Park. It's a little quieter place if you're looking for a quiet spot on the coast of Maine. It's a 5,000-acre property with lots of hiking trails. So this is views from the Great Pond Mountain itself. So you get great views of Acadia and Camden and Penobscot Bay. This picture here is in New Hampshire. So here you're looking south over Lake Winnipesaukee. The peaks that you're seeing over on the other side, that's the Belknap Range that I referenced earlier. So this is from the Ossipee Mountains, just north of there. And so the Lakes Conservation Trust has conserved a 6,000-acre property around the Castle in the Clouds. So the Castle in the Clouds is a famous destination in New Hampshire that people have been going to for decades. It's fresh water. It's sort of like a spa kind of place. And this land trust conserved the property a decade or so ago, and they've transformed a lot of these trails that were carriage trails into hiking trails. This trail goes up to Mount Roberts, which provides one of the most scenic views in the mountain. The mountain actually historically was a volcano. We just have great views. But one of the things I like about this destination is, in New England, a lot of our trails sort of go up and straight down. This tends to be more switchback, so trail's a little bit longer than others in the book, but it's a little easier on the legs. This property here in northern Maine is in the Debskeneg Lakes Wilderness Area. This is a Nature Conservancy property. So like Audubon, the Nature Conservancy has properties in all 6 New England states. They're also a great resource to find hiking opportunities. This is probably one of the more remote properties in New England. It's just a spectacular place south of Baxter State Park. You get great views of old forests and secluded ponds and spectacular scenes of Mount Katahdin. So there are a lot of organizations in the state that conserve land. There's also a lot of organizations in New England that actually maintain the trails. Sometimes they're one and the same. But when you go to Connecticut, I like to talk about the Connecticut Forest and Park Association. So they maintain over 800 miles of trails in the state of Connecticut, what they call their Blue Blaze trails. So there are a number of those trails featured in both of my New England books. One of my favorite ones is the Quinnipiac Trail. This goes across the ridgeline on Sleeping Giant Mountain. This is near Quinnipiac University. Just a spectacular hike. This is much like the mountains that are along the area here in the Connecticut River Valley. This is a trap rock mountain, so it tends to be kind of gradual on one side and just precipitously drops on the other side. The terrain is a little bit rugged. The rocks are kind of jagged in places, so you don't climb that high, but it's deceptively difficult for the amount of elevation you're gaining. But the payoff is really good too. A little quieter place this is Macedonia Brook State Park near the town of Kent, Connecticut. This is near the Housatonic River. And this loop is about a 6-mile loop that goes on both sides of the Macedonia Brook, which is in this picture. And one of the highlights of this hike is Cobble Mountain, which is about 2,000 feet high. And from its open summit, you get views towards the Hudson River and the Catskills of New York. It's a quiet place in the state of Connecticut. Much closer to where we are here, this is near Bigelow Hollow State Park and Nipmuc State Forest. And I love this trail here. The Nipmuc Trail goes along Breakneck Pond for, I think it's about 3 miles. And for at least half of that, you're just in a tunnel of mountain laurel. And I happened to do this in mid-June, and it was just spectacular. The mountain laurel was just blooming and reflecting in the water. It was really beautiful. Other wildflowers you may see, that's Jack in the Pulpit. And that's what a Jack in the Pulpit looks like later in the year. So the state of Vermont is blessed to have an organization called the Green Mountain Club. They've been around for 100 so years. They manage hundreds of miles of trails in Vermont. They are the go-to resource if you're looking for hiking opportunities in Vermont, both along the Long Trail, but in the Northeast Kingdom and other places. This is one of the most spectacular parts of the Long Trail here. This is near the summit of Mount Mansfield, which is the high point in Vermont. And so Mount Mansfield, the summit has a number of bumps on it named after facial features with a little imagination from either the east or the west. When you're looking at it, it looks like the forehead, the nose. This picture is taken from the upper lip. The next bump is the lower lip, and then there's the chin. You can see it's got like a double chin, and then the Adam's apple is tucked around the corner there. But for about 2 miles, you're mostly above trees here, and you just get great views, 360 of Lake Champlain and the Adirondacks, much of Vermont, and the White Mountains to the east. So you may see painted trillium here. This is one of the earlier flowers that comes up. Oftentimes I'll see a patch of snow and you'll see these trilliums coming up really close to them. That's a purple trillium, and that's what the purple trillium looks like in the late summer. So the Appalachian Mountain Club is sort of the go-to trail organization in New England. They have a presence other than Vermont because the Green Mountain Club is so dominant there. But the Appalachian Mountain Club got its start in the late 1870s, I believe 1876, if I'm not mistaken. And their big push was to protect the White Mountain National Forest. So their connection is always, from the beginning, was to the White Mountains. And they've branched out and have a presence in the Berkshires and in Maine recently and other places. But when I think of the White Mountains, I think of the Appalachian Mountain Club. And this picture here is near their Lonesome Lake hut, one of 8 huts that they have in the White Mountains. So this place is called Lonesome Lake. But you won't be lonesome there, particularly on a day like this. But you can see why the views are just spectacular. So that picture you're seeing, it's kind of deceptive. There's actually a highway that's about 1,000 feet below between here and that mountain ridge over there. But that's the Franconia Ridge. That was the picture from the cover of the book. Lafayette on the left, picture looking south towards Mount Lincoln. So a bird you may see here is a red-breasted nuthatch. They go ank, 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 ank. I'll trip or something. I just feel like they're laughing at me while I'm hiking. You also may see a cedar waxwing. So these guys are really sleek insect-eating birds. You'll see them just swooping around near water bodies, eating insects like crazy. This time of the year, you might start seeing them more urban and suburban places. They'll devour fruit-bearing trees. You'll see a flock of them. They're usually gregarious. You see them in dozens, sometimes 50 or more. So there's a lot of long distance trails throughout New England, and most of the hikes in my books are day hiking. And so what I do with long distance trails is try to find a day hike along that trail and kind of whet your appetite to explore other parts of that trail in the future. So long distance trails in southern New England, one of the more significant ones in the eastern part of the Massachusetts is the Bay Circuit Trail. It makes a semicircle basically from Newbury, Mass in the north to about Plymouth, Mass in the south, basically paralleling 495 and 128. This picture here is of Borderlands State Park in eastern Massachusetts, pretty close to Foxborough. Great place to visit ponds and interesting rocks and things like that. Whole network of different loops you can do in this place. Much closer here is the Mid-State Trail. So this is Balance Rock on the slopes of Mount Wachusett. I like Mount Wachusett. It's the highest point in southeastern New England, just over 2,000 feet. And it also one of the few places where you can see some old growth forest as well. There's some fairly significant trees, 200-300 years old on the slopes of Mount Wachusett. So the Mid-State Trail is about 90 miles long. It starts in Douglas, Massachusetts in the south, where it connects with the North-South Trail in Rhode Island. That continues another 60-odd miles to Charleston Beach. On the northern end, near Mount Watatic, it connects with the M-PACT Trail and goes another 20 miles into southern New Hampshire. So it's almost 200 miles of contiguous trail along those 3 connected trails. Another connected trail is what's become the New England Trail. So historically, this was comprised of the Metacomet-Monadnock Trail in Massachusetts, the Metacomet Trail in Connecticut, and the Metabesset Trail in Connecticut. And that's, I think, 215 miles from the New Hampshire border to Long Island Sound in Connecticut. And there's just a ton of great hikes to do along the way. This is one of my favorite ones. Here's Mount Tom. Mount Tom Reservation is a great place to go hiking. Another great place to piece together loop hikes. Again, another one of these trap rock mountains that you get fairly gradual slopes on one side and it just drops off on the other side. Great place to see hawkster and migration. Also a good place to see birds like this is an ovenbird, which is a type of warbler that kind of blends in. They're really vocal. It's hard. Sometimes they're hard to see. This is even harder to find, but this is what their nests look like. And so they call them ovenbirds because that supposedly looks like a Dutch oven. I know hiking, I'm not an oven expert, so I'll take their word at that. And I found 4 eggs in that nest. So I was hiking one day and this bird came up, just flew out of nowhere. And I stopped and carefully looked on the side and I found that nest on the ground. I was really careful not to step on them. A little more remote long distance trail, more in northern New England. This is the Coos Trail. So the northernmost county in New Hampshire is Coos County. It's a fairly remote place. This trail begins in the northern part of the White Mountains, goes all the way to the 4th Connecticut Lake, which is where the Connecticut River starts on the border with Quebec. This is a picture of my brother on Table Rock in Dixville Notch. So Dixville Notch is a famous place. You may hear about it every 4 years. The people are up at midnight casting ballots in the presidential election. It used to be about 20 people that voted. I think they're down to 2 or 3 people now. But so that spot, I don't know how dramatic it looks like to you, but it drops off steeply on both sides. Where my brother's standing there, it's fairly wide. It's not too bad, but it actually gets narrower and narrower. It's a pretty spectacular eagle's eye view of the notch. So I mentioned the mountain laurel before. So this is the hobblebush, which basically is the northern version. It sort of serves the same purpose in the habitat as the mountain laurel. You'll see this. It's ubiquitous in most of northern New England. That's it flowering in May, and that's the fruits that it gets later in the year. I mentioned the Green Mountain Club before, so their pride and joy is the Long Trail. This is the oldest long-distance trail in the country. It's 275 plus miles from Williamstown, Mass. To the Quebec border. This is day hiking opportunities all along the way. This is probably the most spectacular part of the trail. This is from the summit of Camel's Hump, 4,083 feet, 360-degree views. Again, much like Mount Mansfield, you can see Lake Champlain and the Adirondacks, the White Mountains, and you can see all the way to the Quebec border to Killington in central Vermont. It's just a great place to explore. That's the hermit thrush, the state bird of Vermont, and that's what its nest looks like, much like a robin. They're a thrush, just like a robin. Their eggs are robin egg blue. So the Long Trail was started, and shortly thereafter, it inspired the Appalachian Trail. They coincide for about 100 miles in Vermont. And obviously, there are hundreds of other miles in New England that are a great destination in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine for hiking. I like the Maine section in particular. It's closer to where I live, but it just has spectacular scenery. This is one of my favorite spots along the Appalachian Trail. This is near the summit of the west peak of the Bigelow Range. And you're looking at Avery Peak, which is named after Myron Avery, who is one of the people who created the Appalachian Trail. So you get a great view of Flagstaff Lake there, and it's tough to see in this picture, but Mount Katahdin is visible on the horizon on a clear day, and you can see Mount Washington in the other direction. So you get pretty great views here. And it's just a spectacular 12-mile loop to great views and high elevation pond and things like that. So a place like this, you may see this guy's a blackback woodpecker. This is probably the rarest of the woodpeckers we have in New England. They're really particularly like dead, dying spruce fir forests. So if you're in northern New England and you see a spruce fir forest it looks like it's had better days, you may find this guy. The male's got a yellowish crown. It's kind of a pretty color on him. You also may find this guy. This is a spruce grouse. So we have 2 grouse in New England, the rough grouse, which tends to be a little bit more aggressive, and they kind of do this drumming sound. This guy is much tamer and more attractive, I think. That red over the adult male is really brilliant. So other highlights featured in these books, there are 2 presidential traverses that I talk about in the book. So most people know about the presidential traverse in the White Mountains. That's the one on the right. We're looking from the summit of Mount Jefferson towards Mount Adams. It's about a 19-mile end-to-end hike. A lot of people do it by breaking it up and staying at 2 AMC huts along the way. I did it one day. The book describes how you can do it that either way, or it talks about how you can do day hikes on either end of that of the traverse. But it's a great hike. Again, like I was talking about the Franconia Notch, you want to do this on a nice day with the weather. So the one on the left, maybe I had it backwards before. The right was the White Mountains. The left is Vermont. So see, these are some of the lesser known presidents from the 19th century. We're looking from the summit of Mount Roosevelt, named after Teddy, looking over at Mount Wilson. There's also a Mount Cleveland and a Mount Grant. So this is about a 13-mile loop in the Breadloaf Wilderness, much more forested, much quieter, and much easier in terms of the terrain. But it's a fun place to explore if you want to kind of get away. It's right in the middle of Vermont. It's near the halfway point of the Long Trail. So some of the wildflowers you may see, mostly more on the New Hampshire presidential range. These are rhodora. They usually flower around Memorial Day. This is Labrador tea. They flower in mid-June, and that's sheep's laurel that usually flowers late June into July. They tend to grow together in bunches, low-growing vegetation, but they just flower at different times. You see them in these rocky areas, sometimes near wetlands too. So a lot of waterfalls and cascades featured. These are Stepstone Falls. I'm told these are the highest waterfalls in the state of Rhode Island. Angel Falls, they're not. But it's a pretty nice spot, and they're in the Arcadia Wildlife Management Area, 14,000 acres in the state of Rhode Island. It's also adjacent to, I think, about 30,000 acres in Connecticut. So it's right on the Connecticut-Rhode Island border. So it's a really quiet place in Rhode Island. If you feel like you're worlds away from Providence and places like that. Good place to visit. This is Chapman Falls in Devil's Hop Yard State Park in Connecticut, sort of east of the Connecticut River, sort of halfway between Hartford and Old Saybrook. In the state of Massachusetts, this is March Cataract on the slopes of Greylock. So Greylock's a fun place to hike. It's a little downer for me when you hike up there because there's just so much chaos up there with cars and so forth. But what I really like about Greylock are these quieter places in the hopper, on the slopes. And March Cataract is one of these places. It's like a mile off from a campground up high on the mountain. And you go through this tunnel of sugar maples and yellow birch. It's just spectacular. And then you get these gorgeous waterfalls, and you just feel like you're miles away from the summit. A little farther north in that same area, these are Liebrook Falls near Manchester, Vermont. Manchester is a nice place to do some hiking. You got Mount Equinox in that area, and Bromley. There's some nice hikes to do in that region. In Crawford Notch State Park, these are Arethusa Falls, the highest waterfalls in New Hampshire. The book describes a nice loop, combines this with Frankenstein Cliffs. You get a little waterfall, a little high elevation views. It's about a 4-mile loop. And near our namesake to where we are right now, this is near Monson, Maine. No relation to Munson, Mass, I guess. But this is Gulf Haggis. It's pretty close to the Appalachian Trail and the 100-mile wilderness, and adjacent to where the Appalachian Mountain Club has a number of sporting camps that they've renovated that are great for overnight. But this is either a 5-mile loop or 8-mile loop to this beautiful slate canyon with waterfalls and chasms. They call it the Grand Canyon of Maine. It's not the Grand Canyon, but it's still a great place to visit. Believe it or not, this is coming pretty soon. I like to talk about winter hiking. So I go out 12 months of the year. Winter hiking you got to be prepared when you do it, have extra gear, plenty of layers, be really aware of the weather forecasts and the winds and so forth. But the upside of the winter is you can go to places that are somewhat crowded in the summertime and a little bit less crazy in the winter. And you get days like this, no bugs, no 100% visibility, no humidity. It's quiet. It's just spectacular. So just be prepared. And this is from the summit, near the summit of Mount Jackson on the southern presidential range, looking up towards Mount Washington. You may see this guy up there. They tend to congregate near popular places. This is a gray jay, and often they'll feed right out of your hand. So I'll just sort of wrap it up with a number of destinations that are featured in the book. So there's a few coastal New England destinations I'd like to talk about. This is one of my favorite places on Cape Cod. This is this is near Wellfleet. We have a school in Maine called Waynfleet, and every time I think about Wellfleet, they mix up in my head. So it's near Wellfleet, and it's called Great Island. It's about a 6-mile loop, great hike to do. And the one thing you got to think about here is the tides. You want to do it at lower tides because part of the hike is along the beach, much easier to hike when it's low tide. Part of the hike is more inland in the dunes, and you go through some marsh areas that can be inundated when the tide is up. So just be aware of the tides. Pick a low tide. It's a really fun place to explore. Another great destination, sometimes overlooked for hiking opportunities, is Block Island off the south coast of Rhode Island, near the tip of Long Island as well. But over 40% of Block Island has been conserved, and there's a whole Block Island Greenway of trails that go around the island. Go to places called Turnip Farm, Enchanted Forest. It sounds like, to me, always sounds like something out of the 100-Acre Wood and Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh. And it has that kind of English countryside feel to it with hedgerows and things like that. But these are pretty dramatic cliffs on the southern part of the island near Black Point. So these fiddler crabs are really common on that Cape Cod hike, particularly in that area is talking about those marsh areas when they're not underwater. These crabs are just scurrying around all over the place. You'll see hundreds of them. That's a snow egret. American oyster catcher in a bed of oysters there. And this is a sanderling. Usually I see sanderlings along sandy beaches. If you ever walk along the sandy beach in the wintertime, these are the guys that kind of scurry along the water as it's kind of going up and receding, and they just kind of follow the tide going in and out. So the Berkshires is another great place to explore. The Appalachian Trail cuts right through there. There's great hiking opportunities, quintessential New England towns to visit. This picture here is near the summit of Bear Mountain in Connecticut. This is the highest peak in Connecticut. Connecticut's one of these weird states. The highest point in Connecticut is like 1/10 of a mile below the summit of Mount Frizzell, whose high point is in Massachusetts. It's kind of a weird to get to the high point in Connecticut. You go to this peak and then hike down to get to the high point. But this is the highest summit in Connecticut, just over 2,300 feet. Great hike. It's near Sages Ravine, which is on the Appalachian Trail. That's the first spot you hit in Massachusetts as you're going north. And then you can see north in this picture at Mount Race and Mount Everett. Mount Race has got probably one of the most scenic parts of the Appalachian Trail in Massachusetts. For about a mile, you're on this wide open ridge line. It's really nice. Monument Mountain, probably the signature trustees of reservation property in the Berkshires. This is a great hike, 3.5 mile loop in Great Barrington. The legend here is that Herman Melville and Nathaniel Hawthorne were hung up here in the storm, and they were looking around. They could see Mount Greylock, and it looked like a whale, and supposedly that's inspired Moby Dick. So when you're hiking in the Berkshires, this is one of these places in the understory you may see Rufus-sided Towie, but it's also a place in New England you have to be aware of rattlesnakes. I found this guy near Mount Allender in the Berkshires a few years ago. He was right on the trail. It was late in the year. I think he was heading to the caves. They go into caves. He was pretty docile, and I snapped a bunch of pictures, and he slithered into the trees. And then I think I took one picture too many. The tail rattled, and I was with my daughter. She yelled and went up the trail. I was quickly behind her. I wasn't that brave, but he was pretty. It wasn't that threatening. They don't want to bite you. They rattle because they want to protect their venom for something else. So I mentioned earlier that I've been hiking for 50 some odd years. The first hike I did was this one, Mount Monadnock in the Monadnock region. I was 3.5, I don't remember it. But I went up the White Cross Trail and down the White Dot or vice versa. So it's a great hike to do. A Monadnock is an Abenaki term meaning mountain sort of by itself. And that's used now to describe any mountain in the world like that. Geologists will use that to describe it. So what's cool about Mount Monadnock, you got this 3,165 foot peak. It's been burned, so that's all open granite, and there's nothing else really around it. So you just got unlimited views in all directions. So it's a great place to hike. The hike I describe in the book goes up the White Dot Trail, but it takes a little quieter route down. So I try to provide those kind of opportunities, if you want to get off the beaten path a little bit. This picture here is from the north end of the M-PACT Trail on North Pack Monadnock. So Pack means south, so this is south. It means small. So this is small Monadnock basically. And this is from the Cliff Trail. So you have a great view. You're looking at Mount Monadnock there on the horizon. This is a quieter place than Mount Monadnock, but both of them are worthwhile destinations. Another great hike to do in this region is Mount Cardigan, another 3,000 plus foot mountain. The Appalachian Mountain Club has a lodge at the base of this one. You can do a great loop, come down over the fire screw. It's another mountain that has been burnt So you got this open polished granite with great views in all directions. You're a little closer to the White Mountains than Mount Monadnock, so you get a little better views looking north from here. All right, so I scared you a little bit with the rattlesnake. This guy you shouldn't be scared of. This is a red F, which is a juvenile form of the eastern newt. They must be poisonous because when they're around, they're so obvious to see. I would think predators would eat them. So I'm guessing the red scares things away. That's a spring peeper. We have 2 tree frogs in Maine. This is one of them. This guy was hiking one day. He fell out of the sky somehow, landed in this balsam fir, almost like a Christmas ornament, just with his little suction cups, just holding onto the limb there. This guy is my Zen toad over here. He's in a hole. He's got a slug on his head, and life is good. And a more common reptile you'll see is a painted turtle. The Green Mountain National Forest, about 400,000 acres in south and central Vermont. Unbelievable hiking opportunities there. This hike here is one of the easier ones. This is to Little Rock Pond on the Appalachian Trail. It's about a 4-mile round trip hike. It's like 2 miles to the pond. You loop around the pond and head back. Really feel secluded here. The book does describe how you can make the hike about a 7-mile loop and go to the summit of Green Mountain, which is pictured in here. And you get a few views of the pond from above and some of the nearby mountains. So wildflowers, other wildflowers you may see, this is lady slipper. These are bunchberry. That is blue bead lily or clintonia. That's what the bunchberry looks like when it fruits, and that's what the blue bead lily looks like when it fruits. The bunchberry and the blue bead tend to grow in clusters together. Can't talk about hiking in New England without talking about the White Mountain National Forest. So combined with adjacent state parks and other conservation land, it's easily 1 million acres of conservation land that's got 1,000 miles of hiking trails. Hiking trails for whatever you're looking for. You want the highest peaks in New England. You want waterfalls. You want low elevation kind of things. This hike I like to point out, this is on the Kancamagus Highway, and it's about a 4.5-mile loop on the UNH trail to the summit of Hedgehog Mountain. So when people go hiking in New England, they like to talk about 4,000-foot mountains. And I've done all the 4,000-foot mountains. They're really fun. It's a good list to challenge yourself. But don't underestimate or underappreciate some of the lower ones. So this peak here is at 2,500 feet. You're looking at 4,060-foot Mount Passaconaway there. The views here are just so much better than the views from Mount Passaconaway. And that hike is like 10 miles. This is like half of it. So it's just depending on what you're looking for. Do it all, but don't skip hikes like this. You may see this guy here is a white-throated sparrow. One of my favorite birds, the rose-breasted grosbeak. And another one of my favorite New England birds, the scarlet tanager. So in Acadia National Park is another great hiking destination. It's about 40,000 acres. There's 3 different sections of the park. So a few years ago, I did a book all on Acadia National Park. There's 40 hikes in this book, covers the entirety of the park. What I like to tell people if you're visiting Acadia National Park is take advantage of the Island Explorer shuttle service. It's a free service that'll take you anywhere. So if you're staying in Bar Harbor, or you stop at the Hulls Cove Visitor Center, you get on these free shuttle buses. It'll take you anywhere on Mount Desert Island. This picture here is from Great Head, looking over Sand Beach and looking over at the Beehive. So these are really popular destinations. And if you did these on a summer day, you'll pull your hair out trying to find a parking space. Use the Island Explorer shuttle. It'll drop you off here, hassle-free. And the other thing the shuttle service does, it opens up an opportunity, almost endless opportunity of basically loop hiking opportunities in the park. They'll let you off on one trailhead, you hike, end up at a different trailhead, take another shuttle, take you right back to where you started. So take advantage of that service that they run all day long. One of the animals you may see here, this is a white-tailed deer. They're fairly common and are pretty, they're not very shy on the island. You can't hunt on the island, so you see them often. Bald eagles, it's just amazing the comeback that bald eagles have made throughout New England, but we see them all the time in Maine. I like these 2 owlets here. These are barred owlets. The barred owls have been nesting near Sur de Mont Spring, near the base of Door Mountain in recent years. I found these guys in August a few years ago. I always feel like the guy on the left there has got watches or something for sale in his jacket. You got to end with the crown jewel of Maine and the Appalachian Trail. So Baxter State Park's a great destination. In Maine, we've had a number of governors that we've been proud of, not so proud of. But one person that most people are proud of was Governor Percival Baxter. He served one term, 2 years in the 1920s. And once he left office, he made it his mission to acquire land around Mount Katahdin. And today it's almost 210,000 acres. There's about 200 miles of hiking trails there. It's the northern terminus of the Appalachian Trail. Just a great place to visit. And what I recommend for Baxter is, Katahdin is a really challenging hike, but it's a great destination. It's a must hike if you want to hike places in New England. It's just spectacular. You need to be prepared in terms of parking spaces are limited and things like that. And the book describes how to secure parking spaces. But the other thing I like to tell people is don't overlook those other trails in the park. So this is a view here of my son and daughter on OJI. We did this hike. It's about 8-mile hike on a perfect August day. We saw, I don't know, a dozen people all day. If we were on Katahdin, we would have seen 200 people probably. So just don't overlook these other gems in the park. And sometimes views of Mount Katahdin are as spectacular as the views from Mount Katahdin. Some of the wildlife you may see here, this is a moose. You may see a snowshoe hare. These guys turn white in the wintertime and kind of tan in the summertime. You may see these two guys, but you're probably just going to be stuck seeing a red squirrel. So thank you for coming out this evening. This is a picture from an Audubon property, Borestone Mountain in Maine. Before I'll answer some questions, I just wrap it up with, again, I have 3 books. This is my one sales pitch. I'm not a big salesman. This, again, came out in 2023, 100 hikes. This is $20. This came out in 2016. This has 115 hikes. That's $15. You can get a package deal for $30. And the Acadia book's $10, so you can get all 3 of them for $40. And I take cash, check, or Venmo, and that's my sales pitch. Again, I hope you had a good time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So you've done the 48 then, huh?
The 48 4,000 footers? I've done the 67 4,000 footers.
Well, I've done the 34 of the ways.
You done? Okay, that's
That
good.
was my, come out of high school, I wanted to do the 48.
It's not too late.
It never made it, but seeing those pictures again, I mean, the last time I did an overnight at the Whites, I did the Pemmy Loop.
Pemmy Loop, yeah.
And that's spectacular.
It is spectacular, yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. So you've done, those are some of the better ones on that loop.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I did the Franconia Ridge, I did the Franconia Loop a couple of times.
Yeah.
Just spectacular up there.
It's still there. It's not too late to get up there.
I know, I can tell myself that.
Any other questions? I'm happy to answer anything.
Do you have a favorite?
I have a favorite. I don't. I think this is the way I usually answer that question. If I knew I had one more hike to do, I would probably do a hike in the northern presidential range, Adams or Jefferson, one of those peaks. I'd go up. A lot of them they tend to have 2 types of trails on there. Ones that go up through these kind of ravines and ones that go on ridge lines. And I would do a hike that went up King Ravine or Castle Ravine up to one of those peaks and come down the Airline or Caps Ridge or something like that and get or Castle Ridge, excuse me, and get that kind of combination. I was born in Connecticut and I grew up in New Hampshire, and my passion for hiking really came in the White Mountains. So when I'm in the White Mountains, I feel like I'm at home, and so the presidential range would probably be that place that I would go to, and not Washington because I want to get away from some people.
What's your favorite hike in the Whites?
Yeah, any of those hikes in the presidential range is great. Yeah, you can't go wrong, and I try to tailor my hikes for the weather too. So and do different ones in different seasons, and Sometimes, again, I showed you a lot of pictures of birds. I like finding birds, and you're not going to find those a lot of times on some of the high peak summits. So
I like the Cardinal Range myself, that's my favorite. It's not crowded.
that's a nice one, yeah.
And the Sid Presidentials from across the street there is great.
It is, yeah.
What's your favorite in Massachusetts?
My favorite hike in Massachusetts. I think I like Allender Mountain actually. I like that hike it's on the border. It's near Bash Fish Falls and Mount Washington. And you can do a great hike over there, and you go to near that Mount Frizzell and Brace Mountain, which is in New York. It's a fun area. That's where I saw the rattlesnake, but it's a fun area. It's got great views over there. Yeah, that's probably my favorite hike if I had to pick one in Massachusetts. Again, thank you for coming out tonight. I'm happy to talk one-on-one with folks, or hope you had a good time.
Yeah.
Take care.